historian or a mathematician or any type of scientist, and you would have some connection to him. And of course, there's the ultimate transcendent connection, but sometimes coming from the outside world, it's a little bit easier to get in a different way. So it's such a pleasure to be here because, well, that's not the holiday I'm preparing for. I'm preparing for Hanukkah at home, buying presents for my nieces and my little nephews, and that's so much fun. And so Basi and I were talking today, and I've been thinking about the miracle of Hanukkah, and it's one of my, not my favorite holidays, but it's one of my fun. I enjoy it very much because I love the idea of the Jewish people as warriors, as strong, as battling against things and being victorious. And I think of all of you as like miracles. I mean, think about it. It's really, I mean, how many of you are in this room? How many are you together? 30?
45.
You're 45. That's miraculous. Think about where we come from and the history of our people, which is really the history of fighting annihilation. And here we are in modern times in a secular community, and there were 45 of you doing this remarkable work. It's real, it's so inspirational, it's so beautiful, and it's really quite miraculous. They're all little shining flames. You really are. It's beautiful. You should be so proud of yourselves. I'm honored to know all of you, and I love hearing about you from Basi all the time. She's so proud of you, and you're such inspiration to her. And so I guess what she wanted to talk about tonight is the Rebbe and the way that he is still here and the way that he connects to ordinary people who aren't necessarily so lucky to have grown up understanding his significance from the very beginning, like all of you are. And I think that probably you guys you're so lucky in some ways. In other ways, you probably can be a little bit complacent because I don't know that you understand necessarily how lucky you really are. You know, you were born into families that have a special connection and a special understanding, and from a very young age, you learn and study so much. You know so much more than I'm ever going to, you know, and you're a quarter of my age. So you're really very, very lucky. But I think because you do grow up like that, you're so deeply immersed, you may not realize or remember all the time how lucky you are. So maybe looking at somebody like me, who had a very different type of childhood and upbringing, you can kind of keep in mind really how exceptional your own is and how exceptional your own path is and how exceptional what it is that you're doing really is. Because you'll all grow up to be, God willing, a Basi in somebody else's community, right? And somebody else's life, and that you'll impact grown women much older than you, in huge and important ways. You know, you'll change other people's lives for the better, doing just what it is that you were brought up to do. You probably don't think about it in that way, do you? Or do you? You do. You do. You know that how special it is, what you do, and the way that you learn is.
It definitely helps.
Does it? It's so inspirational to me to look at all of you. You're so lucky. There's so many things that I wonder if I would have done differently if I'd had a different type of upbringing. You know, maybe not. I don't know. Everybody follows their own path for a purpose, right? But you're so lucky to know so young what your purpose really is and what it is that you're going to go out there and do. Is this what all of you want to do? Do you want to go out in the world and do what Basi does?
I think so.
You should all be so lucky, and the world should be so lucky to get you. For me, I think the first time that I saw the Rebbe, I grew up in a secular household. I grew up, Basi knows, eating spiral ham every Christmas, every holiday, which you can't imagine. But it was a very, very different lifestyle. And how old are you?
13, and 16.
Through 16. So when I was 17, I grew up in Philadelphia, and I left Philadelphia, and I went to the Midwest to a college, to a Quaker college, and that's a religion. They're not necessarily Christians, but most of them are. And they believe in certain things. They believe in an inner light. It's a very sweet religion. But I went to a college for Quakers, and I was one of maybe 2 or 3 Jewish people in the whole community. And it wasn't bothersome to me because I didn't know any differently, you know, and I didn't know anybody, and I spent 4 years there learning wonderful things, and it was a great experience. And then I went to law school in Chicago, and that was a great experience. But I was really introduced to people who were a little bit observant for the first time in my entire life, really. You know, that was the first time that I met peers. I've known older people who were observant, and I'd seen it, and I had, you know, I thought it was lovely. It was a nice, I knew it as a little girl in my grandparents' neighborhood, and it looked really nice, and I had very warm memories of it, but I didn't know anybody that practiced as a, you know, as a young adult. And I saw a little bit of that in Chicago, and it was very pleasant. I had no, you know, there was no problem with it, but it certainly didn't speak to me in any way. I mean, I would never have been interested in keeping kosher or observing the Sabbath or any of the other things that those, you know, kids were doing. And I didn't date Jewish boys. It wasn't that I didn't date them purposely, but I just didn't. Wasn't, you know, just wasn't a thing, you know, and it wasn't a problem for me, and it wasn't a problem for my family. And I think about how lucky I am. Whew, the bullet that I dodged in meeting and marrying really the first Jewish boy I kind of ever dated, my husband. And then we moved here, and we raised little hand-eating children, and because we didn't know any differently. And life happens and all sorts of things. And then I met Bossy through a friend, and I had some challenges with my youngest child, some speech challenges with my little one, and they were serious, and it was a struggle for me. And I did it all on my own because I didn't know any differently, and I certainly didn't pray. I mean, I was praying, but I didn't know I was praying, you know, for things to work out okay. And then I met Bossy, and we went to this retreat for moms, for children at the Friendship Circle, and I saw a video of the Rebbe, and I could not believe it. It was like, I brought my tissue, because I'll cry when I tell you about it. It was like lightning struck. And that's, Bossy and I were talking about that today. You know, for you, it makes sense, and it's something that you understand, and it's intuitive, and it speaks to you, and it's like the right thing, and you get it, and it doesn't seem strange. And for me, it was a shock, a tremendous shock. It's still a little bit shocking sometimes. It was really like the sky lit up with lightning, like there was a fire, like there was a siren, like I can't really even describe it to you. It was tremendous. I physically felt my heart break. I really did. And I cried, and I couldn't explain why, and I was a little embarrassed because there were a lot of other women there that weren't crying, and I'm not a public crier. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I prayed. And I was praying for something very specific and very